In the peaceful world of gospel music, few names shine as warmly as Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton. For many years, their voices lifted hearts and healed souls. Together, they became known as the strong, soulful pillars of the Gaither Vocal Band, blending deep harmonies with a message of faith and unity. Their performances were more than just music, they were moments of worship that touched lives around the world. Fans saw in them not only singers but brothers in spirit. But like all great stories, even the most beautiful harmonies can face seasons of silence. Over time, people noticed subtle changes. Guy and Wes were no longer seen performing together. Photos stopped appearing, and fans wondered what had happened. Some thought they had taken a short break, but as months turned into years, questions grew louder. Had they argued? Had something gone wrong between them? Behind the quiet separation, however, was not conflict, but two men each facing personal storms that would test their faith and friendship in ways few could see. For Guy Penrod, the journey took a sudden and unexpected turn. Known for his long silver hair and powerful baritone voice, Guy had always been full of strength and joy on stage. But behind the spotlight, he began to feel the weight of years spent traveling, performing, and pouring his heart into ministry. One day, his body simply said, "Enough." Doctors warned him that his vocal cords were strained, and he was exhausted beyond measure. Continuing to sing could risk permanent damage. For a man whose voice had become his ministry, the news was heartbreaking. Yet Guy knew he had to make a hard choice. He stepped away from the stage, not to give up, but to heal. In his quiet time away, he reflected on his life and faith. He later admitted, "I was singing louder than I was listening to God." Those words showed just how deeply he needed to rest, not just physically, but spiritually. The break became a time of renewal. Away from crowds and applause, Guy found peace again, realizing that even servants of God need to pause and listen. While Guy was dealing with his health, Wes Hampton faced a completely different challenge, one that tested his patience and character. A kind-hearted and talented tenor, Wes was known for his faith, humility, and love for mentoring young Christian artists. But one day, an old private message thread resurfaced online, taken out of context. Although his words were innocent and full of encouragement, some people in the gospel community misread them. They accused him of compromising his beliefs. The reaction was swift and harsh. Wes could have fought back publicly, but he chose silence. He said quietly, "Sometimes silence is the only answer love can give." Instead of anger, he turned to prayer and reflection. It was a painful time, being misunderstood by the very people he had served faithfully. The experience humbled him deeply, but it also strengthened his faith. He decided to continue his ministry quietly, away from the spotlight, focusing on his family and mentoring young musicians who still needed his guidance. It was a test of faith, and Wes passed it with grace and humility. As both men walked their separate paths of struggle, their connection grew quieter. Not because of anger, but because life had simply placed them on different roads. They weren't fighting, they were healing. Yet fans noticed their distance. There were no joint interviews, no shared songs, no tours featuring both of them together. For longtime Gaither Vocal Band followers, it was a silence that felt heavy. People whispered rumors of a rift, but those close to them knew the truth. They were not enemies, they were brothers walking through valleys in their own lives. Sometimes even the strongest friendships need time and space to breathe. Guy was rediscovering his strength through faith, while Wes was finding peace through forgiveness. Each man prayed for clarity, unaware that their paths would cross again in the most unexpected and divine way. Then came a turning point that only God could have arranged. Both Guy and Wes were separately invited to a private men's retreat in the Highlands, a peaceful gathering meant for reflection, not publicity. Neither knew the other would be attending. On the second night, during a quiet moment of worship, the group began singing the classic hymn, "Great is Thy Faithfulness." As voices filled the room, Guy looked up and saw Wes across the space, singing with tears rolling down his face. Without hesitation, Guy walked over, placed his hand on Wes's shoulder, and whispered, "I miss my brother." Wes looked up, holding back tears, and replied, "I never stopped being one." It was a simple but powerful exchange. No cameras, no reporters, no audience, just two men, humbled by life, finding peace again. That night, they prayed together, forgave, and began to heal. Their reunion wasn't about rebuilding a career, it was about rebuilding a brotherhood. That single moment reminded them that true friendship, grounded in faith, never really fades away. After that retreat, both Guy and Wes returned to their ministries, but in a different, quieter way. Guy Penrod, now in his 60s, released a heartfelt EP titled Quiet Strength, which reflected his personal journey of peace and faith. Instead of chasing fame or large tours, he focused on his family, spending more time with his wife and children. His performances became intimate and meaningful, centered on worship rather than applause. Wes Hampton, too, returned to serving others, not through grand stages but through mentorship. He began guiding young worship leaders, helping those who often feel forgotten in ministry. Though the two men rarely appear on stage together anymore, their bond remains strong. They may not sing side by side as before, but their spirits are connected through the faith they share. As Guy once said, sometimes healing doesn't happen on stage, it happens in silence. Their lives are now testimonies of quiet strength and divine grace. Many fans have long wondered what really happened between Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton. The truth is simpler and deeper than most realize. There was no scandal, no betrayal, no fight, just two men of God navigating the storms of life. Guy faced exhaustion and health challenges, while Wes endured judgment and misunderstanding. Each needed time to heal. And in that silence, God worked. They both learned that true friendship doesn't need to be seen or shouted from the stage. It's something sacred that grows stronger even in the quiet. The gospel world often celebrates big voices and bright lights, but sometimes the most powerful testimonies happen when the lights go dim. Guy and Wes showed the world that grace isn't just a word sung in songs, it's a way of living, forgiving, and moving forward. Before their quiet seasons, both Guy and Wes were icons of the Gaither Vocal Band. Their combined harmonies brought millions closer to God. Guy's commanding stage presence, with his long hair and warm baritone, made him instantly recognizable. Wes, with his gentle smile and smooth tenor, complemented Guy perfectly. Off stage, they prayed together, led Bible studies, and supported one another through life's challenges. For over a decade, they stood as a symbol of unity in Christian music. That's why their silence shocked so many people, it felt like losing part of a family. But even though their public partnership paused, their private faith journey continued. Their lives remind us that fame is temporary, but faith lasts forever. Whether on stage or in silence, their purpose remained the same, to glorify God through their voices, actions, and love for others. The story of Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton teaches a valuable lesson to anyone facing hardship. Even the most faithful leaders can grow weary. Even the strongest friendships can face silence. But that doesn't mean the bond is broken. Sometimes God allows us to step away from what we love so He can restore our hearts. Guy's time away taught him to listen again, while Wes's silence showed him the power of humility and forgiveness. Together, they remind us that grace is not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about standing again after being misunderstood, hurt, or tired. Their journey shows that healing doesn't always happen in front of cameras or crowds. Sometimes it happens in quiet rooms, in whispered prayers, and in simple acts of forgiveness. Today, both Guy and Wes continue to serve in their own ways. They may not share a stage as often, but they share something far deeper, a bond forged in faith and refined through trials. They are proof that real brotherhood doesn't depend on fame or visibility. It lives in forgiveness, prayer, and understanding. Fans may still hope for a reunion concert, but in truth, the greatest reunion already happened, when two brothers found each other again through God's grace. Their story isn't about separation, it's about restoration. It reminds us that no matter how far we drift, faith has a way of bringing us back home. In the end, Guy and Wes didn't let rumors or silence define their story. They let grace write the final chapter. And that chapter is one of peace, love, and enduring brotherhood. When you look back at the journey of Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton, it's easy to see God's hand guiding it all. Theirs is not a tale of fame lost or friendships broken, it's a story of how grace turns pain into purpose. Both men faced darkness but chose to walk toward the light. They remind us that even when the music fades, faith keeps playing in the background of our lives. The spotlight may have dimmed, but their harmony continues, in every song sung by those they've inspired, and in every heart touched by their quiet strength. What really happened between them wasn't a scandal, it was life. And through that life, they showed the world that God's grace can restore even the quietest hearts. In a world filled with noise and rumors, their story stands as a peaceful melody, a testimony that the most beautiful harmonies are the ones born out of forgiveness and love. After stepping away from the stage to heal, Guy Penrod found himself rediscovering what truly mattered in life. Fame had given him a platform, but faith gave him peace. During his quiet years away from the spotlight, Guy began to reconnect with the foundations that had shaped him long before he became a gospel icon: faith, family, and simplicity. He realized that even though he had spent decades singing about God's love, he had rarely taken time to rest in it himself. That realization became the turning point of his journey. Guy started focusing on spiritual restoration, spending more time in prayer, reading scripture, and appreciating life's small blessings. He once said in an interview, "The older I get, the more I realize it's not about the applause, it's about being faithful to the calling." At home, Guy's family became his greatest joy. He and his wife Angie have been married since 1985, and together they raised 8 children. Their home, away from the bright lights of fame, became a sanctuary filled with music, laughter, and love. Despite his global success, Guy never allowed fame to distance him from his roots as a husband, father, and man of faith. His children often describe him as gentle, patient, and humble, the same qualities fans see in his music. Guy has often shared that his favorite performances are not always on stage but at home, surrounded by his family, singing hymns together. That deep connection between music and family is what keeps his heart grounded. It's what gives his songs their warmth and sincerity. He doesn't just perform gospel. He lives it every day. When he returned to music after his recovery, Guy's approach had changed completely. Instead of touring endlessly or chasing commercial success, he decided to create music that came straight from the heart. His later works, such as Hymns, Worship, and Blessed Assurance, reflect a calmer, more intimate side of his artistry. These albums were not just projects, they were personal expressions of gratitude and faith. Fans noticed the difference immediately. His voice sounded more peaceful, his lyrics more reflective. Guy's music had always inspired people, but now it also healed them. His songs carried messages of rest, surrender, and quiet strength, lessons he had learned during his own time of struggle. Through this phase of his career, Guy reminded his audience that gospel music is not about entertainment, it's about connection with God and the soul. In interviews and concerts, Guy often shares stories that encourage believers to hold on to faith, even in silence. He speaks openly about the importance of listening to God's voice, something he once neglected during his busy touring years. "When you're always singing, sometimes you forget to listen," he said with a smile. That humility makes him relatable to many who feel overwhelmed by life's demands. Guy's message is clear: taking time to rest, reflect, and renew is not weakness, it's wisdom. He believes that God sometimes uses quiet seasons to strengthen our spirits. And in his case, those quiet seasons gave birth to some of the most meaningful music of his career. Today, Guy Penrod continues to travel and sing, but on his own terms. He performs at smaller events, church gatherings, and family-centered concerts where the focus remains on worship, not fame. He has also become a mentor to younger Christian artists, reminding them that their calling is about faithfulness, not popularity. His calm presence and genuine spirit make him a respected figure not only in gospel circles but in the entire Christian community. Even after decades in the music industry, Guy remains humble, always quick to give credit to God for his success. His fans, both old and new, admire him not just for his voice but for his heart. In many ways, Guy Penrod's story is about learning to balance purpose with peace. He has shown that stepping back doesn't mean stepping down, sometimes it means stepping closer to what truly matters. His journey through exhaustion, silence, and restoration has become an example of grace in motion. Whether standing under bright stage lights or sitting quietly on his porch at home, Guy continues to live out his faith with sincerity and joy. And perhaps that's his greatest legacy, proving that the real beauty of gospel music lies not in the spotlight, but in the stillness of a heart that listens to God.